walk away either stirring on things or changed in the moment, God, not because of how awesome we do things at New Life, but just because of how awesome you are. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. You guys have a seat. Morning. Morning. How is everyone? Someone is Al, someone is Stellar, and someone is... Okay. Yep, good. That sounds just great. Good. Glad to have the energy in the room. Hope everyone had a great weekend. It's not over. Today is still part of that. And I'm really happy that you guys are here. It's been a fun summer so far for me. I don't know if people feel like the summer's been generally good. New Life has had some cool moments too, and we have one coming up. The Peru team is getting ready. What's that?
Wednesday morning.
Wednesday morning. Yeah, our team for Peru is heading out. So we should take some time to pray for you guys after the service. Yeah, we'll do that. We're gonna do that. All right, great. We knew that already, but I'm just gonna say it again. Okay, awesome. So that's really exciting, and you'll get to hear more about that in a little bit when Andy does announcements. So look forward to that. July is a special month for me. It's Family Reunion Month. Anybody go to family reunions? Anybody? All right, so a few of you, right? Yeah. Family reunions are, anybody, raise your hand if you've ever been to a family reunion. Ever been to one? Yeah, okay. If you haven't, I can't say you're missing out, per se. I guess it depends on the family, right? But I have two, and they're always one week after the other. So last Sunday, I wasn't here because I was at the family reunion for my mom's dad. Yep, and everybody that trickles down from there. He's not alive, but the rest of the family is. And then yesterday I had one on my dad's side for my dad's mom's dad's dad. Yep, and everybody who trickles down from that side of the family. So they were fun. I brought some pictures. Would you like to see them? I guess. Nah. It's my family, people.
Yeah, Caleb.
Thanks, Jimmy. Let's show some pictures. First up, this is the first family reunion I ever attended. Yep, that is myself, a very chunky baby. Yeah, I was very chunky. My dad's side of the family was apparently very concerned about the chunkiness because we don't have chunky people on my dad's side of the family, apparently. But this is my mom's side, so it's okay. That was my great-grandma Bert right there. She's signaling yes. First family reunion. Probably not. She was probably saying, wait, don't take the picture yet. But we're going to say she was saying, first family reunion for Caleb. Next up, this is my family right here. So this is my mom and my dad. Apparently couples haircuts were a thing back then. I'm not sure. That is my older brother. And down on the right, that's my face. Yeah. So there's me at a family reunion. Yeah. And I don't know if I was wearing a black shirt. I'm going to assume that we were. So yeah, that's pretty special. Yeah, so there's my family. And then these are more modern. This was from yesterday. My Aunt Debbie texted me this picture from, this is my dad's side of the family. These are the Alexanders, in fact, even. So not the Crafts, it's my dad's mom's side of the family, right? So this is that thing where there are 4 different people taking pictures and no one ever looks at the same camera at the same time. This little one here, she's got a lot of sass in her, though. You can tell from the picture. She was fun to be around, yeah. So that was a good time. And then the last one I put was just from yesterday. This is me and my grandparents, my mama and my papaw. That's what you say if you're from Southern Ohio, by the way, mama and papaw. Anybody else use that vernacular? Thanks, Ashton. Thanks for the support. Oh, thank you. Thank you, girls. Thank you very much. Yeah. Okay, great. So not all of us use the grandfather out there. So yeah, this is my mama and papaw Woo. Some of you know about these people. They're Woo because when I was little and I would hug him, he would say Woo. Yeah, not because that's their last name or anything associated with Woo, other than just the sound, an onomatopoeia, if you will. Yep. So that was just taken yesterday. I had a really good time with them. Okay, that's good. Thanks, John. So, family reunion, thinking a lot about family. Here's some things I realized, okay? Family, pretty cool, right? On their best days, there are people that are there for you to love you unconditionally, no matter how dumb you might be, right? And you have to do that same thing for the people that are in your family too. But it's not always that case. That's not always the case. I can tell you from both sides of my family reunion, there's a lot of brokenness too in family, right? So there's a lot of, on my dad and my mom's side, there's a lot of like, oh, when you learn the story of what happened with your grandparents when they were a kid, it just makes things make sense all the way down. You know what I mean? So like alcoholism, for example, on my dad's side, that's generations of that. Okay, so I don't look at my uncle and wonder, well, how on earth did you end up with to be an alcoholic? Because I know his dad's an alcoholic, and I know that his grandpa was an alcoholic, right? And so like things can kind of, brokenness can also trace down. And not everybody has happy family stories, right? So I'd say, yeah, my mom did love me pretty much unconditionally, but not everybody gets that from their parents either. Probably not even everybody in this room. So family can be awesome, and it can be really like a really like concentrated place of brokenness too. And it can be everything in between, and sometimes all at once. And those are some things that I thought about. And I don't mean to get all heavy, but I just reflected on that when we thought about Genesis, going through Genesis, because that's been kind of the sermon series we've been going through, and Genesis is a lot about family too. It starts out kind of zoomed out on this big picture of family, right? Like a human family. So God creates people, and then not too long after, brokenness enters the scene, and just like alcoholism on my dad's family, this sin, this brokenness kind of spreads down, right? And it's just, it's a part of all our lives. We're affected by it, and it's also in us. And so you see some really cool things happen with people in Genesis, but also a lot of brokenness too. And then it zooms in around chapter 12 on Abraham's family and those children of his, and we've been following that along. And certainly God does some really cool things through them, but also certainly they're just jacked up, let's be honest. So they're a sitcom waiting to happen. And there's a lot of messed up stuff that happens and carries through that family. So we've looked at Abraham, we looked at his kid, we looked at his grandkids, and if you remember, if you were here for Chris's sermon, when he spoke about Jacob and Rachel and Leah and Laban and all the manipulation, and that carries on forward from there. And we're going to see that. So we're looking now, starting in Genesis 37, if you want to turn there, you can. In Genesis 37, we kind of focus in on now the next generation. So there were all those kiddos, if you remember, right? There was like this big competition between the ladies to have as many kids as they could to try to win their husband's affection, sort of. And then one of these kiddos was Joseph. And that's who we're going to zoom in on. He's one of the youngest. At this time, he is the youngest when we're reading the story. And we're going to see some stuff about him. Now, before we start, there's a few things that I want to tell you about Joseph that I think would be good to know. But I'm going to take a drink of this water bottle first. That is refreshing. So anyways, Joseph, all right? So Joseph is, his story starts off kind of with a big brokenness, a big damaging brokenness. Okay, so we're going to read about that today. So sorry about it, but it's just what we're going to talk about a little bit today, okay? But people commonly associate Joseph or talk about Joseph when they're talking about the idea of like a life story or a life narrative. So there's a lot of people in the Christian community, scholars or writers or otherwise, that like to talk and write about like the story of our lives, right? That each of us live a story, and God wants to do something with the story that we live, right? And so, people talk about it differently, but something that's pretty common about all of them that I've observed, which is only probably 3, just to be honest, small sample size, is that they usually talk about Joseph as an example of when you're talking about how does God want to work our story? What kind of story do we want to have, and how does God use us? A lot of times they use Joseph. So for example, if you've ever heard of Donald Miller, he wrote a really good book called Blue Like Jazz and some other ones. He does this thing now called Storyline, which is all about like living a good story, co-authoring your story with God, whatever you want to call it. But the first chapter is all about Joseph, and like Joseph as like a template for a life story. Okay? There's another guy named Dan Allender who started a seminary school in Seattle, and he wrote a really good book called To Be Told, and I'll reference a little bit of that too. And it's a similar thing. It's about your life story, and who does he talk about at the beginning? Joseph, right? And I had one more, but I can't even remember what it was. So there's another one, but I don't remember what it is. Oh, I can tell you what it is. It was right before Andrew and Sarah got married, like a month before, because they were still in fiancés. And we went to this thing called the Conference on Mission, which was in the convention center. It was a big convention all about like world missions. And there was there were these breakouts, right? And we were trying to decide what breakouts to go. We were sitting at Subway talking about, okay, let's go to a breakout, let's decide. Andrew wanted to go to some nerdy one, I don't know, about studying scripture or something like that, But there was another one about women in ministry. And so Sarah and I were really interested in that. So we decided to go. That was like women's role in the place of ministry, right? And leadership, I think is it, yeah. So we decided to go. We walk into the room, and there's like 50 older women, and then Sarah and I walk in. And all the women start making jokes. They're like, look who dragged their boyfriend in here. I was like, first of all, she's engaged to another man. Second of all, that is sexist. I'm allowed to care about women's issues and be a man. Jeez. It's the 21st century, ladies. So then I took my seat. Well, the moral of the story is, it was the wrong breakout room. They like had switched the schedule. So everyone thought they were here to hear about this issue, but this other guy came in and was like, oh yeah, that one got canceled. Which made the ladies not feel great, as you can imagine. But then they said, instead this guy's gonna talk about living your story. So it was actually a really great session. But he talked about, the thing that he talked about was God wants to tell a story through your life, right? And it involves calling, it involves conflict, it involves resolution, things like that. And who do you think he talked about at the very beginning? Joseph, right? It was Joseph. It was Joseph. So yeah, so Joseph commonly, I think I proved my point now. When people talk about the story of your life, right? They talk a lot about Joseph. So we're going to be talking about Joseph for like the next 4 weeks, counting this one, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so I would highly recommend you keep that in mind as we go through it. What kind of story did God tell through Joseph, and how might that relate to the story he wants to tell through your life? Okay, but every story starts kind of in a similar way, and that's how we're going to start, with some kind of beginning drive and then conflict, right? Some kind of beginning story and then conflict. So let's take a look at it. Genesis chapter 37, and we're going to start in verse 1. I'm going to read 1 through 11. You can follow along, or I've got it on the screen. Okay, so here we go. Here's what it says. John has it on the screen. Thank you, John. Thanks, John. Here's what it says. Jacob lived in the land of Canaan, where his father was an immigrant. This is the account of Jacob's descendants. Now remember, Jacob also, after wrestling, you read about, you saw this last week, also received the name Israel. So you're going to see that interchanged a little bit. Just remember, Jacob, Israel, same person, Joseph's daddy. All right. This is the account of Jacob's descendants. And that marker in Genesis, anytime you see this is the account of blank's descendants, that usually means we're going to start a new story now. Okay, that's kind of what that means. Okay, sometimes it's a real genealogy list, but not always. So this just means new story now. All right, this is the account of Jacob's descendants. And now we say Joseph was 17 years old, and he tended the flock with his brothers. While he was helping the sons of Bilhah and Zilpah, those are his half-brothers, his father's wives, Joseph told their father unflattering things about them. Uh-oh. Now Israel, or Jacob, his dad, loved Joseph more than any of his other sons, because he was born when Jacob was old. And Jacob had made for him a long robe. First of all, I'll get back to that. Don't freak out. All right? He made for him a long robe. And when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than any of his other brothers, they hated him. They couldn't even talk nicely to him. Joseph had a dream and told it to his brothers, which made them hate him even more. And this is what he said. He said, hey, listen to this dream I had. When we were binding stalks of grain in the field, my stalk got up, stood upright, and your stalks gathered around it, and they bowed down to my stalk. Crazy, right? And his brother said to him, will you really be our king and rule over us? So they hated him even more because of the dreams that he told them. Then Joseph had another dream and described it to his brothers. I just dreamed again. And this time the sun and the moon, the 11 stars were all bowing down to me. And when he described it to his father and his brothers, his father scolded him and said, what kind of dreams have you dreamed? Am I and your mother and your brother supposed to come and bow down to the ground in front of you? And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father took careful note of the matter. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this background. First of all, if you can't tell that this family is messed up, let me fill you in. They're messed up. Okay, so this is kind of like, and Chris talked about this a few weeks ago with Isaac and Rebecca kind of playing favorites with their two sons, right? Rebecca loved one more than the other. Isaac loved the other one more than the other, aka that was Jacob. And it caused a lot of tension, just bad parenting, right? That's just bad parenting, right? Parents should not have favorite children. My mom told me when I was born, she was really worried because she thought, I loved Joey, that's my older brother, she said, I loved Joey so much. I wondered how I would have room in my heart to love another kid as much as I loved Joe. And she said, and then you were born, and I loved you more. That's not what she said. She said, then you were born, and you just find a special place in your heart to love just as much as the other kiddo. Agreed? Agreed, yep. So that's called good parenting. That's called healthy parenting. Right? This is unhealthy parenting, what we're reading here. This is kind of like Everybody Loves Raymond, if you're familiar with that sitcom, meets the Duggars, plus even more messed up than all of that, okay? So there's just a lot of not great stuff happening. Joseph was the youngest, also known as a big punk. All right, anyone the youngest here? Yes. All right, you're a punk? Yeah, I'm a punk. It's just the way you are when you're a kid. All right, there's especially some real punking going on here. He's just stuck up. First, he's a tattletale, right? It's like he's working out with his brothers and he tells his dad unflattering things about him. I don't know what that means. It's like, hey, they were supposed to take a 10-minute break, and I saw them take a 15-minute break. I just want to let you know. It's all that. You know, I don't know what the unflattering things are. They were saying naughty words. I don't know. But either way, he was kind of a tattletale. And then we bring in this coat. I can explain, if you're not disturbed by seeing Bill wear the long coat, I can explain why I was disturbed by it. Because most translations of the Bible, in fact, if you're reading from your own, it probably says something different. It probably says something like, tell me. Coat of many colors. Yeah, Technicolor dream coat, some say. Yeah. So here's the deal. It's an uncertain word. And it sounds a lot like the word for long sleeves. And it also kind of sounds like the word for lots of colors. So they don't really know. I like colors. I like to imagine it as a coat of many colors. You can imagine it as whatever you want. The point is not about the color of the sleeves. The point is that it was a symbol that represented to him, to his father, especially to his brothers, the special place that he had. And maybe not a healthy special place, but the I am loved a little bit more than you are, right? And I'm going to wear it so you can see it every day. I'm just a little bit more chosen out of all of you, and I want you to look at this every day. My dad loves me more than your dad loves you, right? And I'm going to put it on right now so you can see it every day. So this was like a symbol of his favored position, and not in a cool way necessarily, I would say. That's my opinion, that part. I don't think your dad should give you a coat and not give everyone else a coat. That's what I think. All right, my brother and I both got BB guns on the same day, Christmas. I never used mine. Then there are the dreams, okay? The dreams that come in after that. And this adds a little bit more attention. So here's something that's good to keep in mind, right? In this whole chapter, God never shows up once. He's never mentioned once, right? Not even in what we're going to continue to read. You're never going to hear, and the Lord said, or the Lord thought, or God said, or God ordained. You're never going to see that. But dreams were usually considered to be a special way that God revealed some things to his people. So this is pretty much what we have of God's activity in this story in front of the scenes. A big theme of the Bible is whether you see him or not, God's always acting behind the scenes. But a lot of times in the Old Testament, they center on stories where God's very active. Like God said, God did, God whatever. But here we just see that Joseph had some dreams. And he has these dreams that are, they're pretty crazy. And I don't know if he just doesn't have the emotional intelligence to know that you shouldn't tell your brother about these dreams, your brothers about these dreams, or if he's like rubbing it in their faces. I kind of think, as a younger brother, it's probably the second one. But either way, there's more than just you just happen to have a dream. It's more than that. Is there an indication that you're saying, God's telling me that this is what's going to happen, right? One day, you're going to bow down to me,
maybe not. Maybe it's just about the stalks, but I'm just saying it was my stalk and your stalks bow down to my stalk. So who knows what it means? What do you think it means? Think it means you're going to bow down to me one day?
So, he's a punk, and this adds a definite more attention to it, all right? So this is like the only mention of the divine that we get here. Now, when people are giving these life narrative talks or writing books about this is usually what they start with, okay? They usually start with a point. I'm going to give you this first point, but then we're going to kind of analyze it, critique it, and see what we think. But the first point they usually say is that God gives us dreams for our lives. God gives us dreams for our lives. Okay? Now, that's not what the text is saying, right? The text does not say, and also, God gives everybody a dream for their life. Okay? So I want to analyze this point and see what we really think about it, okay? And there's a part that I agree with, okay? Just like God kind of gave Joseph this ambition, this passion, this dream for what might happen with his life, something special, right? I do think there's something like that for us, but here's what I'll tell you, okay? I don't think that it's always a very specific, detailed roadmap for your life. And this is a little shout out to the fellas in our summer group of Just Do Something. For you ladies or for dudes who aren't able to make it out, I can tell you a big point of this book is that God does have a plan for your life. Yeah, and some of it's really clearly laid out in the Bible, and sometimes, yeah, he does say specific things. But God's will for your life is not some written out roadmap that you have to figure out what it is, right? And if you make the wrong step, You were supposed to go to this college, but you chose to go to this college. Now you're never going to be used by God, all right? Or you're supposed to ask this girl on a date, but you asked that girl on a date, and now your whole life's ruined. Okay, that's not exactly what I think God's dreams for us are. But I do think sometimes He does say specific things. When I've thought about this idea of, okay, what do I really think about these people who say, oh, from this story, this is a good example because just like Joseph had dreams, we have dreams. Okay. This is what I think, and I'll tell you kind of my logic, and you can tell me what you think about it. Am I out of the camera zone? Sorry.
You're good.
Here's what I think, okay? I think that God has intentions for us that are really big and pretty cool. Okay? I think that God has really big, pretty cool intentions for us, especially as believers, especially as people who have put their heart and their life and their trust in Christ. Let me just tell you a few of them, okay? These are normal intentions. I mean, they're not normal, but they're normal for believers, right? He wants us to be able to walk with Christ, right? In freedom and in intimacy, not held back by baggage, right? That's not just like I'm going to journal a little bit here and there, or I'm going to read a passage now and then, and I believe these things about Jesus, but something He intends for you, specifically you, if you're listening, you, is to be able to walk intimately with Christ. That I think is a pretty cool dream for your life. That's true for each of us. Just a couple other things I thought of is, we get to be temples of the Holy Spirit. That's something that Christ lays out for us. That's true for us living in faith in Him today. This is something throughout the Old Testament, throughout the Hebrew Bible, people dreamed about this happening. They said, maybe, one day I really think God's going to pour His Spirit on people. One day I think it's not going to be about you going and getting instructed about what God's like, but each person, because the Spirit will be in them, will get to know God personally. These were prophecies. People dreamed about the day this might happen, and we live in it. So I think that's one really cool intention. We get to be a member of His body on the earth, right? And we get to be in fellowship with one another, and to be actually Christ's hands and feet. Now, I know this seems like kind of a rabbit trail, but what I want to say is, when I think about what kind of big dreams does God have for my life, I think the normal workings of the Christian life are so big. They're bigger than the kind of dreams Joseph had, right? Just the things that we're normally called to as being a believer that's enough for a pretty cool life right there. You know what I'm saying? And I think we take advantage, we take that for granted sometimes. But at the same time, I do think that He has very you-specific plans too. I think that He's given each of you specific giftings and passions and strengths, some of which you're aware of and some of which you may not be aware of yet. And that's cool. But I think that He does have something special for you, something designed just for you. And sometimes that looks like a very specific calling. Some of you in this room have experienced that. If you haven't heard Eddie's story about God laying OSU on his heart and the idea of a church here, you should talk to him about it sometime, right? We wouldn't even be standing here if God wouldn't have put a very specific plan on somebody's heart at one point. But I do want to say God has made you in a specific way because I think He wants to do things in a very you and God specific kind of way. And I'm still thinking through for me what that looks like. At this point, I'm 26. I've learned a little bit about who I am, what kind of things I really get fired up about. And I began to realize how God might use me uniquely to do certain things. And if you haven't thought about that, I would think about it. Okay, so I don't exactly align with the whole idea that God's going to give you some kind of dream in the middle of the night, and it's going to be about, everyone's going to have a Joseph story like that. I don't think that's accurate or realistic. But I do think it's good to think about, what is my role, in the work that God's doing? What kind of story does God want to tell through me? And what might that be? Okay, so I do think in that way God has a dream for us. Okay, so that's my critique of that point, and we're going to move on. Okay, so now we're going to get to the conflict part of the story, and this is real. Okay, so the dream part, you can be iffy on that, but do people experience conflict like Joseph does? Absolutely. And we're going to talk about it for a while, and I apologize in advance if it's a little tough. I double apologize to the ladies because I know Sunday's supposed to be your break from soul healing, and now I'm going to bring it right back on you, so I'm sorry. But it's going to be good. Okay, so let's read a little bit. We're going to start in verse 12, and we're going to go really all the way to 36. Okay, so it's going to be a passage. But try to put yourself in Joseph's shoes when you read about it. It's a story, but it happens, so think about that. Okay, Joseph's brothers went out to tend the father's flock near Shechem. Israel said to Joseph, Aren't your brothers tending the sheep near Shechem? Come, I'll send you to them. He said, I'm ready. Jacob said to him, go, find out how your brothers are and how the flock is, and report back to me. All right? So Jacob sent him into the Hebron Valley, and when he approached Shechem, a man found him wandering in the field and asked, what are you looking for? He said, I'm looking for my brothers. Tell me, where are they tending the sheep? And the man said, they left here. I heard them saying, let's go to Dothan. So Joseph went after his brothers and found them in Dothan. And they said, they saw Joseph in the distance before he got close to them, and they plotted to kill him. And the brothers said to each other, here comes the big dreamer. Come on now, let's kill him and throw him into the cisterns, and we'll say a wild animal devoured him, and then we'll see what becomes of his dreams. Now when Reuben, who's kind of the older, responsible brother, when Reuben heard what they said, he saved him from them, telling them, let's not take his life. Reuben said to them, don't spill his blood, just throw him into the cistern, and don't lay a hand on him. He intended to save Joseph from them and come back and take him back to his father later. Now when Joseph reached his brothers, they stripped off Joseph's long robe, or robe of many colors. They took him, and they threw him into the cistern, an empty cistern with no water in it. And when they sat down to eat, they looked up and saw a caravan of Ishmaelites coming from Gilead, with camels carrying sweet resin, medicinal resin, and fragrant resin on their way down to Egypt. And Judah said to his brothers, what do we gain if we kill our brother and then hide his blood? Come on now, let's sell him to the Ishmaelites. Let's not harm him because he's our brother, he's family. And his brothers agreed. Yeah, it's pretty bad family, right?
There's no family, let's not kill him, but
let's put him into human trafficking. His brothers agreed. When some Midianite traders passed by, they pulled Joseph up out of the cistern, and they sold him to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph to Egypt. And I'm just going to finish this story out just so you can start to see kind of the effects of what this did to the family. When Reuben returned to the cistern and found that Joseph wasn't in it, he tore his clothes. And then he returned to his brothers and said, the boy's gone, and now where can I go? His brothers took Joseph's robe, and they slaughtered a male goat, and they dipped the robe in the blood. And they took the long robe, and they brought it to their father, and said, we found this. See if it's your son's robe or not. And he recognized it, and he said, it is my son's robe. A wild animal has devoured him. Joseph must have been torn to pieces. Then Jacob tore his clothes, and he put on a simple mourning cloth around his waist, and he mourned for his son for many days. And all of his sons and daughters got up to comfort him, but he refused to be comforted, telling them, I'll go to my grave mourning for my son. And Joseph's father wept for him. Meanwhile, the Midianites had sold Joseph to the Egyptians, to Potiphar, Pharaoh's chief officer, commander of the royal guard, and that's where Ed's going to pick up next week. Is that you? That's Andrew. Andrew's going to pick up there next week. Yeah. Okay. So let's move on a little bit and talk about kind of what happens in this story and what we can learn about our lives from it. Okay, so as you can see, things got pretty downhill fast, quickly. Basically, jealousy led to hatred, and hatred led to murder. They planned to kill their family, to kill their own son, but then they decided it'd be better and they sold him into human trafficking. Okay, so you saw a picture of my brother up there earlier, the one that you thought was me, but then my face was down in the little corner. Remember that? Yeah. I love my brother. We're really close. I mean, relatively. We get in fights sometimes, but to even imagine, I can't. I tried, and I cannot even imagine a moment where my brother would look at me with hatred and sell me into slavery, or look at me and say, "I wish you were dead." I can't even imagine what that's like. But this is what happened to Joseph, right? With his brothers, and this is stamped into who he is at that moment. Right? Sold in, this is who he is, this is who you are. You were loved, now you're unloved. You were accepted and cherished, and now you're unaccepted, and you're a slave. You're gone. You had a family, now you have no family. This moment changed his life right there. Right? It's not like tomorrow wakes up and everything's better. This is his life now, right in a moment. He was wounded, he was scarred. And I think this relates to us in a similar way. One, let's not be naive and pretend that this same kind of thing doesn't happen today, right? Millions of people live in slavery today, and some of these people are sold into it by their very own family. So I don't want to just gloss over that and say like, oh, that was then and this is now. That's still something that actually happens today. But even on a ground level for us, even though that's not something we've experienced or maybe haven't experienced or been in a place where we thought we'd be, possibly experience that. Here's something I can tell you is that generally the world does give us scars, right? The world gives us scars. And if you are keeping notes, that's the second point. So that part is not unique to Joseph, right? We live in a broken world. That's a common theme in Genesis, and it's a common theme throughout the whole Bible, is that we live in a broken world, and we have brokenness in us, and we all experience scarring. And when I say scarring, I don't mean cuts and bruises, right? I don't mean those times when someone hurts your feelings, but you get over it and you make out and it's fine, right? Although those can be tough. I mean those moments or relationships or seasons or struggles in your life that leave something on you, you know? That's what I'm talking about. Has anyone seen Inside Out yet? Okay. The rest of you, that's your first application. You should just immediately go see it after service ends, after we eat lunch, and then go see Inside Out. I'm not going to ruin anything in the movie, I promise, but I'm going to tell you about some part of the movie. Okay, so if you're not familiar, it's about the emotions, and they live inside this little girl's head named Riley, and it's adorable. All right. But they have memories, right, that pop out during the day. Every time something happens, it creates this little memory. And the memories are usually always associated with emotion, like joy, for example. And every once in a while, something happens to Riley that creates, the memory rolls out, but it rolls down a different pathway, right? And what's that called for those of you who've seen it? It's a core memory, yeah. They call it a core memory, right? So there's one when the first time she was out skating with her little family, she was like 3, it looks like, and she's skating around and she scores a goal and her parents hug her, and that creates this core memory around, it creates this drive in her for hockey. But the core memories, they are unique. They go out and they create something that becomes a part of who you are, and just see the movie. I'm not going to say anything more than that. Now they don't go into the depths of human brokenness or sin in that movie because it's for children. But I think, as I was thinking about this sermon and the idea of scarring, I think that movie did come up because I think there are some things that we experience or that happen to us or that we actually do that can leave something like that. That it's not just a memory that it gets flushed down, or it's not just a relationship or an experience that leaves us, but it leaves something on us. And so I think that's something that each of us do experience. And I know that's a very heavy thing to say, but I think that just like this happened with Joseph, I think this happens to us. Dan Allender, who is one of those guys that wrote a book, calls it a moment when we're named. That something in the world or somebody or something that we do gives us a name against our own will. Like Joseph, for example, in this moment was named abandoned, unloved, whatever else. Okay, hated. So as I went through that book and I walked through it, and I'm asking, this is a vulnerable topic, so I'm going to provide a little bit of vulnerability for you. For your sake, and maybe mine too. And this is something I talk about a lot, and it's because it's a big part of who I am, just like what we're mentioning right here. But when I read through that book, the name that I think I was given was fatherless, right? So those of you who know me or know my story, and I know I do talk about this kind of frequently on a sermon basis, but I lost my dad when I was like 8, okay, to cancer, and it wasn't a good experience, So that's something that as I get older, I realize more and more ways that has affected me. And things that I don't like about me, or things that I've struggled with, or even just weird, quirky ways that I relate to people, a lot of that I can see direct trace to that season in my life, that moment. It was more of a season. Cancer was drawn out. Okay, so that has made an imprint on me, right? And that name was kind of written across me. Fatherless, I worked with a woman, she was like 50, her name was Donna, she's crazy and super sweet at Starbucks for a while. And she also lost her mom when she was 8. And I remember at that time I was going through some counseling for anxiety, but then ended up talking mostly about this because they were super related. And I told her, I was like, so I'm 26, it's been a lot of time. When, I thought that I would be done dealing with this, And she said, I'm 50. You're never done. You're never done. And she didn't say it in a way like, oh, your life's over. But it just, that kind of stuff, it's always, there's always going to be something to it that affects who you are. So I don't want to cast a whole bunch of nets because I imagine as I talk about that, you have an idea of what that looks like in your life, right? I'm not out to try to produce tears out of everybody or anything, but I just want to say that kind of thing happens, and if you haven't thought about how that stuff has affected you or what that stuff might be, it is good, it's beneficial to dig into a little bit, okay? It can be from family, it can be from past relationships, it can be from friends, it can be from your own stuff. I know a lot of guys, especially maybe who, when they were really almost too young to know what they were doing, stumbled into some sin that got a grip on their life for a long time. Okay, and that's a name across your chest, whether you like it or not. Now here's the truth, okay? There's some ways, this is not from the Bible, this is not from psychology journals, this is just from my noggin, okay? So, big grain of rice. Take it with a bowl of rice, okay, what I'm about to say. I think that there are some ways that we deal with this that aren't always healthy. Way number one is we can bury these scars, right? We can bury the pain and hold it in. This was my chosen way of delivery. I didn't, from 8 to 21, I never even visited my dad's graveside and didn't even think about that. Didn't even think about it, I was just avoiding it, just burying it. And that's something you can do. Let me tell you something, you can do it. You can do it. You can bury any baggage, emotion, you can do it. People do it. People do it and then they die. They do it, it's true. They do it their whole life. Let me just tell you something though, okay? This is something I've learned from personal experience. You cannot bury stuff selectively. You cannot selectively enclose. You cannot selectively bury. If you bury stuff that you don't want to deal with, you are going to bury other stuff that you don't want to be buried. What I mean by that is your ability to be vulnerable in relationships, your ability to experience a plethora of emotions. I think can be really damaged and held in when you say, I'm just going to ignore this stuff. I'm not going to deal with it. I'm just going to pretend like it's not there. It's gonna bury more stuff than you want it to bury. Okay. I think another thing that people do often is they internalize their scars. So if someone mistreated you, then you start to believe you are not, okay, I'm unlovable, right? Maybe, I don't know if Joseph did that or not, I don't know. But I think that there's a way where you can say, well, this must be me, this must be who I am. Sometimes people externalize them, okay? They get these scars and they say, well, now I'll never trust people, or I don't have any patience for people. I think there's lots of ways, and there's probably more than that, okay? But the cool thing, okay, the really beautiful thing about just who God is that those aren't really his plans for how you deal with your scarring. And I'm gonna really kind of fast forward / ruin Joseph's story right now. Sorry, Ed, it's gonna happen, okay? Because I told Ed, giving a sermon about this chapter, I told Ed and Amy this, so giving a sermon about this chapter of Joseph and stopping here is like showing you Bambi right until his mom gets shot and being like, let's go home. How can you apply that to your life, all right? So you got to finish the story. You have to see how Bambi ends up, okay? So let me just tell you something about what happened with Joseph, okay? The dreams came true. They did, okay? There was a time when he was in a position of power over his family, but it wasn't ever about him getting that power. It was about God accomplishing his really big purposes to save lots of lives through Joseph. And he worked not in spite of this terrible event that scarred Joseph. He worked through it. He redeemed it. Okay, and I'm just going to really quickly hit on this for what this means for us, and I do think this is what God does desire to do with that stuff. Okay, whatever it is that's scarring us. Okay, and this is your blank. It says God desires to use our scars to bring about his purposes for us, and I'm filling that first. Okay, God desires to use our scars to bring about his purposes for us, but then do me a favor and just cross out the word use. I said my outline before this changed in my heart, and write redeem over that. Because it's a very specific kind of musing we're talking about, okay? So, in the end of the day, that's what God did with Joseph, and we're going to see that, right? This is a big theme of Joseph's life, is he redeems that scar, he redeems those low points to bring about his good purposes. And this is just what I want to say quickly about what redemption is. Okay, redemption for those things that might be on your heart. It is the gospel alternative to burying, internalizing, externalizing. It is the best and healthiest way to be able to handle those scars. It is not turn that frown upside down. Okay, if you've ever lost to someone or been through something significant, you may have experienced a person walking up to you and saying, hey, he works out all things for his purposes to the good of those who loved him, so when you think about it, this is really probably okay. That is at best just someone with really low sense of emotional intelligence. At worst, it's someone psychotic, and they're just out there. Those people are out there. They don't mean to be terrible comforters, but they can be. Like Job's friends, you know, that kind of thing, if you're familiar with that story. So it's not just pretend like everything's all right, let's just focus on the positive, let's focus our psychology strictly on everything positive. It's not that. But it's also not, hey, when life gives you lemons, you know, make lemonade. That's not redemption either. It's not, hey, this stuff is happening to you, just try to make the best of it, you know. This is something different, okay? This is like when life gives you a pile of dirt, God will still make beautiful lemonade out of it in a way that you can't, because it's just what God does, okay? So it's just something that you just can't do. So what I would say, like, this Joseph's life is an example. You're going to see that. Another example that I think about often with this is Corrie ten Boom. I love her, and I've talked about her probably before, but she was a survivor of the Holocaust. She was put into a concentration camp. She watched her sister get killed in front of her eyes, okay? And then, when she got out, through what God did in her heart, through thinking about the gospel, she actually got to a place where, like, the theme of her life became forgiveness and love, loving your enemies and forgiveness, okay? Now, I can sit here and tell you, you should love your enemies and forgive them, but if a woman who survived the Holocaust and has actually looked at a prison guard who beat her sister and hugged him and said, I love you, tells you about love and forgiveness, that's something just a little bit different, okay? That's a way that God has redeemed her life to bring about something in his plan that we just can't do. This is who God is, right? God is a God who redeems stuff. He just loves it. If you've got all your stuff together and you've never spent any time being broken, I don't know what God's going to do with you, but if you're a broken person that feels like a mess, you're right up his alley. I can just tell you, that's just where his heart is, right? So we see like this whole broken world, and that's what God did through Christ, right? He came in and he didn't just bring down some behavior modification strategy like I talked about a couple weeks ago, but he said, no, I'm going to take these broken, messed up people who have experienced brokenness and who've enacted brokenness, and I'm going to make a people for myself out of them. Because I came for the sick, you know, I didn't come for the healthy. So that's just who he is. And for that jump in your life, I know a lot of us have already started working on that. But he's got a plan to use all of you for his redemptive work. And so, in application, here's what I would say, okay? If you've never dug into that stuff, I have a hard time saying, like, just dig into it. You know, because those of us who have started, it's a can of worms. That's what Eddie told me the first time I talked to him about digging into some stuff in my life. He said, you're going to open up a can of worms. You know, I just want you to know, it's not going to be like a 3-week process. That was true. Thanks for that. Thanks for the forewarning. But I'll tell you, God can do really beautiful, really beautiful things with just all the messed up parts of us. So what I would encourage you to do is think through, what are those scars in your life? Think through, how do you think God could use those? You know, or work through that experience to bring something out. And then here's the big one. If you're not already, I want you to talk to somebody about it. Okay? I think that would be a good idea for you, personally. Just as your brother, I think it'd be a good idea for you to talk to somebody about that. You know, if you're a dude, talk to a dude. If you're a lady, talk to a lady. That'd be my advice. That's not always the case, but that's just general advice, okay? And I know the ladies are kind of, if you're going through soul healing, I assume this is the kind of stuff you're talking about a little bit. Is that correct? Yeah. But if you're not going through that, or if you're a dude, especially for dudes, because, you know, sometimes we're like, I'm not going to, I would recommend that you do. Okay, I would just recommend that you do. All right? Not going to force it, though. But that's who God is, right? He's a God of redemptive work, and he wants to bring that same redemption into the stories that we live. And it's totally worth it, okay, I can tell you that, from just someone that's not even halfway done, but started working on it. Totally worth it, okay? All right, let's pray. God, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you for a chance to hear from your word, God. I thank you that, man, you're just not a God of like super high expectations that we just have to live up to, or it's not good enough, God, but you really love to use messed up people. God, I thank you for that, because I wouldn't have a shot if that wasn't where your heart's at. I don't know why it is, God, but I just thank you that you love the ragamuffin. God, I thank you so much that that's who you are. I thank you for the work of redemption that you did for us in Christ, and I thank you for the continued individual work of redemption that you want to do in each of us. God, help us to be brave and to let you have your way in that in our lives. I ask this in Jesus'